All right, it's 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sheppard. I'm a founding partner at GrowthX and lead instructor for sales and business development at GrowthX Academy. GrowthX is a $50 million seed stage fund. Yes, we have money, so you're going to want to shut up and listen. Just kidding. About the second part. Anyway, so my background, I've started 5 companies. I've always been the selling or selling founder, co-founder, first sales hire in the organization. So I've got a unique perspective on what it is to be in a position of actually having to reach out and talk to humans, especially at the startup stage when you have a limited amount of time, money, and resources. At GrowthX today, we're focused on investing in seed stage companies, typically B2B, with early customers and early revenue that show signs of product market fit and could potentially be helped by our accelerator program, which is a post-500 program. We're focused on helping companies develop markets and make money, as opposed to develop product and raise money. So once you get to that stage and you're interested in our small checks and our big help, you could come to us and we can have a conversation. And a big part of that is all about the proper allocation of resources at the seed stage. And it's all about how you make good, intelligent decisions about who you reach out to and how you have conversations with people. So a couple of myths that I want to dispel immediately, and a couple of things that I've been trying to kill for years because it's just my general attitude. So I don't believe in closing, I believe in helping. I think closing is a byproduct of being fully immersed in trying to help somebody else be successful. And if you believe that, then you'll buy into what I'm about to talk about. And if you don't, that's okay too. Maybe someday you will. But I do believe a couple of things. Number one, scripts are dead. I believe in frameworks for conversation. You provide a guide about where you want to start, where you want to go, and what you want to do. I also believe that cold calling in its purest form and traditional form is also dead. I think that if you find out who your right customers are and you have a relevant message that's meaningful and timely, there's nothing cold about the call. Just like it's not spam if it's relevant to me. So let's begin with the premise that selling is helping. Your job is to construct a value proposition and a hypothesis that you can help someone. First thing you have to do is figure out who that someone is. And I'm sure many of you have heard about the concept of the ideal customer profile as made popular by my good friend Aaron Ross from Predictable Revenues, done a great job sharing that information. But you've got to go slow to go fast. Don't skimp on this. Don't take any shortcuts. There are no shortcuts to this. You've got to do the work. Get very clear about who your customer is right now, not in the long run. And I know what it's like when you're raising money. You're telling your investors that everybody's your customer and the market is this big and everybody's going to love you. And you've got to do that to justify the raise. But sooner or later, you've got to get back down to the pebble in your shoe and focus on who's Mr. Right now, not Mr. Right. You have a limited amount of time, money, and resources to get this right. And there's only one of you. Never forget that. There's 1,000 customers, but there's only one of you. So stay focused on that. And only focus on the companies that can help you achieve your next market milestone. And figure out what that market milestone is. Is it X number of pilots? Is it X number of unpaid customers who can validate and give me the appropriate feedback? Is it paid customers? Do I have to convert free to paid? Do I have to put up a paywall to make that happen? Do I have to improve conversion rates in a certain area? Do I have to validate that this is even a thing? I don't know, but everybody's got their own market milestone, or they should, and they have to have that front and center, staring them in the face every day. Because that's how you're going to remind yourself who you should be spending your time with and what you should be spending your time on. One of my partners at GrowthX was the founder of what became Match.com, Will Bunker. Some of you may have heard of him. Every day at Match, when it was called One and Only, they only raised $90,000 because nobody in the Bible Belt was going to give him money in the 1990s for an online dating site. Taboo. So they had to bootstrap it. So on the whiteboard every day, they put most money, least work. What am I going to do today that's going to generate the most money with the least amount of work? And when you're about to enter market outreach, specifically with cold calling, you need to build a list of people that are going to help you achieve that. Then, don't forget, once you build this list, you need to be able to track it. Because if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how you're doing. And if you can't track it, you can't pivot in real time and make good decisions about what you should do next. So, let's talk about the pre-conversation. What do you do before you reach out to somebody? There's nothing more annoying than getting a phone call from somebody who has no idea who you are, doesn't know what to ask you, starts vomiting about their product or service, and then asks you if this is a good time to talk. First thing you should never do is ask close-ended questions that give people an opportunity to say no. But you've got to know your company, you need to know the prospects you're calling into, you need to know their problems, and you have to know the questions you're about to ask. And then you need to be prepared to shut up and listen. Daniel Pink in To Sell is Human has a great term for this. The B and ABC of all these B closing is now, he calls it buoyancy. It's being open to feedback. You have a conversation. It ties right into what I talk about with the framework of a discussion. You may not be able to get what you want out of your mouth in the time that you want to get it out, but that doesn't matter because it's not about you. It's about them. So you give them an opportunity to speak. Every word that comes out of your mouth when you're talking to a prospect or a customer should be designed to do one thing. That's generate a response from whom you're talking to. So know what you're about to do, and then you have to earn the right. Because if you call me and you know who I am, you know about my company, you deliver a value hypothesis based on the research you've done about me, and then you ask me if this is something that I might be interested in exploring, now I'm open. You've earned the right. You've demonstrated to me that you know who I am, you know my company, you've helped other companies like me solve a problem, you're curious as to whether or not I have that problem, and you'd love to have a conversation to see if that is in fact the case. Did I talk about a single product in that statement? A single market in that statement? It applies everywhere. So when I say your products and your markets are unique, yes, that's true, but the path to product market fit is not. You need to do the same things. This is humans helping humans. So stay away from the yes or no questions and earn the right to expect answers and be respectful. And the best way to be respectful of my time or anyone else's is to use it effectively and efficiently without assuming a position of power or control over the conversation. You have to supplicate yourself. Now, how do you determine an ideal customer profile? This is my definition of it, and everybody has their own. That's fine. You do what you need to do. But from my perspective, you have to prioritize. I know there are many different kinds of customers and applications and use cases for your products. I know there are different kinds of people inside of an organization or a department or a company that might use your product in a unique and different way. And all of that's important. You need to map all of those out, and then you need to order them by priority. And then you have to lay that priority over the top of most money, least work. What's my highest likelihood of getting traction in the shortest period of time, in the least amount of effort, and earning the most money in the process? And then that's your number one ICP prioritization. How many of those people are there? Let's go build a list of those folks. Let's find them, let's reach out to them, and let's talk to them. Okay? Now, when you're doing that, you create what we call a value hypothesis. And you test the first couple of profiles against that value hypothesis. So what is a value hypothesis? There's a difference between a unique selling prop and a unique value prop. And I'll tell it to you this way. The difference between a selling prop is what you do for someone. Or excuse me, what you do, what your product does. And a value prop is what you do for them. And there's a big difference in the two. So don't tell me what you do, tell me what you do for me. And you open with that. All right? And that begins the conversation. So a good example of that is, my wife sends me to Home Depot to buy a 1/4-inch drill bit for my drill. It's not because I need a 1/4-inch hole in the wall. It's because I want to make her happy because she wants me to hang a picture. And in order for me to hang that picture, I need a 1/4-inch hole in the wall. Now, I can articulate that after 20 years of thinking about this stuff. A lot of people can't. Not just the people in this room, but the people you're talking to. They may not even know how to articulate the value of what you do. So one way to do it is to look beyond the person and look into how they're measured in the job that they perform every day. I had an example earlier. There's a gentleman in the front row here who was a physician's assistant at Stanford Medical, and I asked him, how was he measured? Give me a quantifiable metric by which you were bonused or incented. He said, the number of patients I can see in a day. Great. So here's a value hypothesis. David, I've got a product that can help you see more patients without sacrificing the quality of what you do. I've helped Berkeley, maybe not Cal, that probably piss them off, but I've helped another medical center like yours increase the number of patients they see without sacrificing quality. I'd love to know if that's actually something I can help you with. Do you have a few minutes to talk about that? That's an opening, that creates conversation flow, that delivers value. It's not, hey, let me tell you about my app. Big difference. So sales is a conversation. We enter it to help. We come in completely prepared, and then our attitude is to seek first to understand before we are understood. I've hypothesized value. I've done the research. I think I can help David see more patients, and I'd love to know if that's the case. And if I get him on the phone or I send him an email, that's the message. That's it. Nothing more. Make sense? Then I listen. I want to know if what I seek or think is true is actually true. So in order to do all of that, there's two basic premises under which you all need to operate if you're selling business to business. Are we all B2B in here? Are there any B2Cs in the room? Those are B2Cs? Okay. So there's a fifth reason people buy in B2C, we know, right? Emotion, right? And all the derivations thereof. But in business, there are only 4 reasons that you can boil down to quantify your value hypothesis and how you connect what you do to the money, okay? So, 4 reasons. Make money, save money, create a competitive advantage, and stay out of prison. Compliance, risk. There are certain products that have to be bought by law. There are certain things that if we don't do, we can be in trouble. We can get sued, we can get thrown in jail. I joke, but you know, it always gets a laugh, so I say it. But it's the truth. People are concerned about liability and risk as part of what they do. So your job, each and every one of you, is to figure out how to tie what you do to one or more of these 4 things. Does that make sense? Does anybody not understand that? Okay, so if you can do that, and sometimes it's just one, sometimes it's all 4, but you better figure out which one resonates most with the ideal customer profile that you've prioritized and the actual individuals inside that ideal customer profile that you're talking to. And if you don't know the answer going in, that's fine. You hypothesize it, and you clearly state it. Look, I think I can help David see more patients, right? Which means he makes more money. And I think I can do it without sacrificing quality, which means he can avoid risk and compliance problems. And then maybe his boss, or his boss's boss, who's the slave to the spreadsheet in the organization. And don't forget, the higher you go up, the more they're the slave to the spreadsheet. The more they're thinking about the economic impact of what they do in their business, and the more they tie things to this. So you have different conversations at different levels, depending on whether you're talking to a user buyer, or an economic buyer, or a technical buyer, or even the champion. So everybody understand this? This is why people buy. All right. Now, how do they buy? Corporate Executive Board does research every year and asks the top buyers in the C-suite, in enterprises all the way on down, and they ask what their biggest frustrations are with organizations trying to sell into them. Can anybody tell me what the #1 reason is that frustrates buyers in big companies? The lack of respect for their buying process. Salespeople piss me off because they don't understand, or they haven't taken the time to understand, or they don't seem to care about how we do business. So when you're entering these conversations, you need to constantly be asking yourself and the customer, is it possible to work together? And if so, how can we work together? And think about the nature of what that creates in the dynamic of the conversation. You're not selling anything. You're seeking fit. Okay? So if you understand how people buy, you can actually follow and align your sales process to their buying process. So human psychology dictates, and 10 years of research and over 35,000 sales calls conducted by Dr. Neil Rackham, the author of Spin Selling, which is my favorite book on strategic selling because it's data-driven. He's collected years and years and years of data to look at these patterns. These are the 4 steps every human goes through when they make a buying decision. First, they have to recognize a need, right? Oh shit, my clicker broke, I need a new one. I just explicitly stated I have a need. Okay. Now, what do? I evaluate my options. Do I buy the same one I had before, or can I fix this one? And by the way, your number 1 competitor in every sale, doing nothing. Switching costs for people are hard. They have to put time and money and resources and risk at bay every time they make a change. Don't take that for granted. So doing nothing or the status quo is your number 1 competitor. Then after that, it's the other ones you might think about. So once I've evaluated my options, now I have to get my concerns resolved before I make a decision. And this is where stuff gets tricky and it's often overlooked. People talk about objections in sales. Sales objections, handling objections. So here's another thing that belongs in my sales graveyard, objections. There's no such thing as an objection. It connotes an adversarial situation. It's combative. What there are human-based concerns. People have concerns. They have worries. And if you approach it that way, and you acknowledge those concerns, you surface them, you would do your best to address them, you dramatically increase your chance of moving people to a decision. Whether that decision is with you or not, it's not for you to say. Again, you're there to help, not push for the close. So once you understand that, and you create a value hypothesis that tells people what you do for them, not what you do, and you enter what I call the conversation framework. So now how do I actually do this? Okay, Sean, I've built my list. I know who my ideal customer profile is. I know where they are. I know how to find them. I've created my value hypothesis that I'm going to create my opening statement with. What do I do next? What's the purpose of this? What do I want to get out of it? This is where it all lands. Conversation framework. So the first thing you do is you have an attitude adjustment that says, I'm not here to sell, I'm here to seek fit. I don't know if we're a good fit to work together, but I'd love to find out. Never forget this. You have to qualify people out as much as you're trying to qualify them in. Don't be a founder with all that bias that just wants to believe that people want to do business with you. Because willingness and ability are 2 different things. And you have a limited amount of time and money and resources to get traction in this market. So you have to be discerning as possible. The second best answer in sales is no. The faster you can get to that, the better. How many of us have experienced sales cycles that are weeks, if not months, and sometimes even years long, only to find things just go dark? And you don't know why, and you don't know what happened, right? Wouldn't it have been better to know just up front? Well, we live in an era now where people don't want to hurt each other's feelings, and I respect that. But it actually does more damage than it does good in these cases. People don't want to tell you the truth because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So you have to become very good at getting to the truth. At GrowthX, what we talk about in our market acceleration program is our job is to help companies get to the truth as quickly as possible. You may not like what you find. That's a whole other conversation. But it's the truth nonetheless. Whether or not you can work together, that's what you're looking for. Okay? Develop your hypothesis, define your value, and then ask the question. Can we work together? Is it worth having another conversation? Is it worth bringing other people into this? Is it worth a demo? Is it worth whatever, right? That's the nature of the conversation. And when you do that, it's disarming, it's connecting, it's earning the right to have that conversation. And people will respect you for it. So how do you get there? So if you go back a couple of slides, number one thing was recognition of needs. This is the first thing that people do when they buy something. What Dr. Rackham's data showed us is that the difference between the most effective sales organizations and the least effective was how much time they spent on recognizing a need and developing a need. They found that the top sales organizations spent 80% of the sale on step one, on average, helping people understand whether or not they do in fact have a need. They may not recognize it the first time you talk or the second time or even the third time, but sooner or later they might with your help. And you have to turn an implicit or implied need into an explicit need, which means they have to say it to you. You don't say it to them. And I get it. We all know what we think we can do for people, but they don't know it because it's not about us. It's not about your product. Products don't create value. Customers do. So you have to talk to the customer the way that they want you to be talking to them, and they need your help to do it. So, how do we help people recognize a need? Well, Rackham and his team developed a questioning framework, an investigative questioning framework. You know, it's often been said that investigative journalists are the best salespeople, and it's because they help get to the truth as quickly as possible. And that's all you're trying to do. By the way, have we talked about our product yet? No. It's the last thing you do. So, his investigative questioning framework is called SPIN, S-P-I-N. It's an acronym for situation, problem, implication, and need. And you ask a series of questions in this order in order to gather context and background about their situation. So after I've called Dave and I've said, I think I've got a way to help you see more patients without sacrificing quality, would you like to have a conversation about that? Yeah, great, wonderful, excellent. How do you see patients today? Talk to me about the process. Who's involved? What do you do? What tools do you use? Now, I'm under the assumption, and we're all under the assumption here, that I've got a product that automates some of that, right? So what I'm listening for is the problems associated with what he does today. And then I focus on those, and then I start to ask problem-based questions. Oh, so that sounds like a manual process. Is that time-consuming for you? Yeah, it can be. Well, can you tell me more about that? Do you have a better way of doing that? You know, how do you reduce time? And then you do this with every problem question until you gain agreement, clarity. You're not influencing, you're asking for clarity on whether or not these are in fact problems. And they have to tell you they're a problem. You already know it is because you work with people all day on this stuff. That's why you're doing what you're doing, I hope. So they may not know it. They have to state to you that this is a problem. And if it's not, fine. Move on to something else that you know you can solve for. And if you're not getting anything, then either they're not a fit or you have to go back to situation and do more discovery to dig out the things that might be a potential problem. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes? You don't just call. So he asked me, just for the benefit of the live streamers, he said he tends to call, and because he's asked why people are calling, he starts to talk about his product, and then they get it. That's fine, but don't forget what the first step was. You create that value hypothesis. It's not about the product, it's about what the product does for them. So all you need to do, it sounds like you're doing a good thing. You just need to tighten it up. Get a little more efficient, reword it that says, for people like you who are dissatisfied with this, my product does this, which can save you time, money, compliance, whatever. Follow me? Good. So you're on the right path. It's just not about the product, it's about the value. Good question. So you go from situation to problem, you get them to state whether or not the problem questions are in fact a thing, and then this is where it gets tougher. What's the impact on your business? Number 3, implication. This is where you tie the problem to the money, to the 4 reasons people buy. Really? You don't see enough, you'd like to see more patients? What's the impact on your business? Well, we're not seeing enough patients, we're not hitting our numbers, our wait times are too long, blah, blah, blah. Really? Tell me more about each of those things. How do you quantify that? Well, average cost per patient or average revenue per patient seen is this, yada, yada, yada. He may not know that, by the way, but somebody up the chain does. So at least now you're starting to understand whether or not you can help these folks, whether or not the problem and the impact on the business is great enough for it to matter so much that they'd be willing to switch. And then once you get them to explicitly state what the impact on their business is, now you get into the needs payoff questions. And this is where you turn it right back onto them and ask once again, based on the way you do business today and the problems associated with it, you've shared with me that the impact is thus. How would it benefit you if there was a solution for that? What would be different in your world? How would your day-to-day life change? How would your company benefit? And now they have to visualize and synthesize the information and articulate back to you how they think they would be better off with any solution. Doesn't have to be yours, by the way. You're not coming at this from your product, right? It's not what if I could solve that for you. It's what if it could be solved. You're still speaking in hypotheticals, not assumptions, and that's important. This helps them discover the pain and the need themselves. Yes? Okay, so he asked a world-class problem question, which was, what if you, during the course of this conversational framework, you determine that they're not a fit for you, but they think you're a fit for them and they want to buy? The question is what's the impact on the market milestone you've set? When you answer that, you'll be able to answer whether or not you want to take them on as a customer. It's a good question, though. Does that help you answer it? Well, you're asking if it's ethical to sell to them if they don't want what you, if you don't think what you have is best for them. No, I would be honest about that. If you think that they misunderstand what you do, sooner or later it's going to come back to haunt you anyway. So, no. Always tell the truth. That way you don't need a memory. Yes, question. Can you speak up, please? Air conditioning.
All of us are startups here, so we are still building products, some features, and that product, some features may be ready in like 2 months, a few would be in like 6 months. So we are talking to these customers, should we talk about like the thing that would come out in 6 months, or should we talk about what we currently have?
Okay, so the question for the benefit of the live streamers and everybody else was, they're still startups, their products are incomplete and not whole. Should they be talking about features that don't exist yet? Well, if you follow this process, you haven't talked about your product yet, right? At all. You're talking about the problem, the impact on their business, and the resulting need, and whether or not you can solve that. The time it takes to solve that's for another conversation or later in the conversation. But you've got to get out of the product-centric approach altogether. Because this right now is about the who, the what, and the why, and then you'll get to the how, bless you, you'll get to the how when they ask you how you do it. Well, this is how we do it. Okay? And if you feel confident, another pro tip, if you feel confident you can build the products or the features into the product that they're looking for, then your answer is always yes. Yes, we can do that. And then you move on. And then later, when you get to resolution of concerns phase, then you have those conversations. Because right now, we're still in recognition of needs. At resolution of concerns phase, you can have detailed conversations about timelines, pilots, structure, terms, payments, all those things. We're not there yet. And that's where most people go haywire. They want to get to the end, because we know what we want our outcome to be. But it's not about us. So good question. Now, this is the part where everybody has the hardest, this is the hardest thing for a lot of people to grasp. The last thing you do is demo your product. All product demos suck, because they're about product. Imagine what happens for a moment if you've gone through the conversational framework, you understand how they do business, you know the problems associated with it, the impact, and the resulting need. What does your demo look like then? Yes, smart man in the second row said it fits to their requirements. So now you can tailor your demonstration of capabilities to resonate with the things that they've explicitly stated are a problem for them. Do you remember when you said that this was a problem? Well, here's how we solve it. The other thing that does is makes your demos less boring for yourself. Doing the same shit over and over and over again, it's not fun. Yes. So what do you do when people say, right out of the gate, just show me your demo, I just want to see your product? So those people are defensive, and that's fine. You have not earned the right to have a conversation yet, and that's okay too, but you have to be buoyant and you have to recognize that. And one thing you say is, great, while I'm setting up, can you just tell me a little bit about how you solved for this today? And then open the conversation and let them talk. Everything that ever comes out of your mouth should be designed to do one thing, and that is to get them to talk to you. Make sense? You have as much time as you need to set up the demo, sir. You own the demo, you control the demo. You need to practice. This is not an overnight thing. You're absolutely right. This takes time, and you do have to practice it. But as long as you have a framework, and at the end of this, by the way, there's a link to a SPIN framework document that you can fill out all your own questions. All right, so now we've moved from a successful conversation to an opportunity, or have we? Do we know? Here's how you put this into process. You apply the SPIN framework to get people to clearly, explicitly tell you whether or not they have a problem and that there's an impact on that problem. And you guys have a copy of this deck, and this is hyperlinked, by the way, the SPIN framework template. So from the 500 folks, if you want it, they can give it to you, and you can download the template and fill out your own set of questions. So you go from implied need to explicit need, and you ask the questions along the way, everything we just covered. And then you need to ask the next set of questions, which is, all right, they seem to be willing to continue the conversation. Do they have the ability to? Can we work together? Do we want to continue to spend time together? So this is a process. It's not new. IBM created this many years ago. It's very effective. It works. It's another acronym called BANT, B-A-N-T, Budget, Authority, Need, and Timing. Do they have budget? Can they buy what you're selling? Do they even have a line item for it? A lot of us have startups, and we create market messaging that's not in line with what people are used to hearing, and we have to recognize that, because we have to sell to people the way they're used to buying, and we have to talk to them in a way in which they're used to listening. So do they have budget for it, or do they have to create budget for it? Who has the authority to make the purchasing decision? Is it the person you're talking to or somebody else? Because if you're selling B2B, there's more than one person involved in this process. And by the way, this entire thing has to happen with every single person that's involved in that process. It won't always happen, but you should at least effort to make it happen. Because if somebody in that room doesn't recognize a need and you've never talked to that person, there's a good chance that they could prevent this down the road. So you need to know who those people are, and you need to be able to take them through the same process and ensure that they recognize a need. Need was taken care of with the SPIN process, and then timing. So let's say you do have budget. Let's say you can buy. Did you ever ask them when? Maybe they're thinking next year because their fiscal budget cycle doesn't turn on again until June 30 of next year. And now you're in August, and you just had an awesome conversation. And you got the decision maker, and he has budget, and he has authority. But oh wait, his budget doesn't kick in until July 1 of next year. So you have to take those things into account. Can you get all this done in one conversation? Sometimes. Not most of the time. This whole process can take 30 minutes or it can take 30 months. Depends on the size, your enterprise, the sales cycle, touch points, the complexity, the number of people involved, the influencers, the roles, yada, yada, yada. How do you know, to take things from conversation to opportunity? The easiest way to score this is need plus one. What does that mean? Well, have they recognized a need? Or do we think we can get to a point to where it's worth having a conversation, determine whether or not they do have a need? That's need. Plus one more. Does somebody have budget in there? Am I talking to somebody who has the authority? Or have they said they need to do something soon? So need plus one takes us out of conversation, pre-qual, or MQL, or SQL, and into SAO, Sales Accepted Opportunity. At least to the point that it's worth continuing the discussion. Because this is where most of you guys are going to fall and fail. You have limited time, money, and resources. This conversation is going to decide how much time you spend on this deal going forward. And if you're wasting your time and spinning your wheels on deals that have no intention of closing in the time allotted to meet your next market milestone, then what the hell are you doing? Every startup should have an opportunity to fail for the right reasons. And you should be efficient in trying to get traction with the least amount of effort possible during that period of time. Okay. And that's all I got to say about that. Questions? Yes? On the BANT chart, yes. Question is if you're targeting B2C or very small businesses. Now it comes down typically to, do you have a single owner or do they have a spouse? Right? Anybody ever go to a timeshare meeting and be told that you have to bring the spouse? There's a reason. I'm married. I got a co-founder. I don't make those decisions without her, right? So you have to understand who's involved in the decision-making process. And make sure that is there a partner? Is there a spouse? Is there, something of that nature? So you have to qualify all that. But it's a great question. Yes, sir.
Follow-up question on what we asked earlier. If somebody you go on the call with, so they're not asking you to show the demo, but they're saying, like, rest of the thing, explain, rest of the thing, no, I don't care about it. Tell me what you do.
Well, you open with tell me what you do for me, right? You've already done that. If you do this correctly, you've told them what you do for them, and then they say, tell me what you do, wouldn't make any sense. That question goes away.
Tell me how you do it.
Great, happy to do that. Tell them how. But in a narrative, have the how question answered. Well, we automate this. How do you do that today? Make sense? And this is actually a very important question he's asking, because he's asking a question that's an effect of a cause that goes away if you use this framework, right? He's dealing with a symptom. The disease of this whole frickin' thing is you talk about your products all day. Focus on the market, figure out how to talk to the market, give them an opportunity to respond, run the framework, and those things go away. I promise you. Yes, sir. Yeah. All right, so somebody wants, I don't have a script, remember? Scripts are dead. Ah! I'm just kidding. Somebody give me a product in a market. Talk to me. Talk to me, Goose. Yes, sir.
Desktop system.
I'm sorry, desktop what?
Testing system for
Testing system for web applications, okay? What's the name of it? UseTrace. Hi, my name's Sean. I'm from UseTrace. We automate what?
Software testing.
Okay, so we automate software testing to save you time and money. How do you do that today? Right? Now we start a conversation. Okay? That's it. Now, all right, well, this is how I do it today. Okay, well, I better know my product, right? That's why I'm here. So I should know how to respond in that conversation, right? See, these are the kinds of conversations. What we're creating here is conversations that you usually end up having like, 7 or 8 conversations in. You can do this in the first 1 or 2 conversations if you structure it correctly, thereby making you more efficient, thereby getting to the truth faster, whatever that truth may be. Yes, sir? What's the ticket size for such a process, he asked me. All ticket sizes. Doesn't matter. Humans haven't changed behavior ever. So until they do, this isn't going to change. Yes, sir? Awesome. If somebody asks you to send over 5 slides on what you do. Yeah, when somebody asks you, well, it depends where in the process have they asked you this? Right, so this is happening in first contact. So I'm going to answer your question, but I'm also going to answer it 2 ways. First is another symptom of a disease in the way you're structuring conversations, right? It's the effect of a cause. When you're not talking to people in a way that they're interested in, you'll get those kinds of objections. If you structure the conversation correctly, those things will tend to wane. You'll have less and less of that reaction. If you do get that reaction, just send me your deck. Wonderful, happy to do it. When's a good time for me to follow up? Do you even have this problem? I don't want to waste your time. Is this even a thing for you? And move on. Disposition accordingly and move on. No is the second best answer. And don't take it personally, please. Everybody in the world is just as scared as you are. And they all have their own problems and their own things going on. And if they're rude or they're terse, learn from it. Maybe I could have done something differently. Be buoyant. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Ralph Barcy, a good friend of mine and a mentor at GrowthX Academy, who I think is the preeminent thought leader in sales development as a profession and a practice, says every person I meet, I put a 10 on their forehead. Everybody's a 10. And then I give them the opportunity to prove me wrong. But he gives them the benefit of the doubt. People are having bad days, things are happening. Other questions? Yeah. You start with IT? Okay. That's the technical buyer. So there are 4 buyer types in any organization: economic, user, technical, and champion. Technical buyers can't say yes, but they can say no. So you have to respect them, and you have to give them everything they need, and it's usually product-focused, not business-focused. And that's okay. But they don't make the buying decision. Somebody who has the purse strings makes the buying decision. Great. Yeah, I can do this myself. Awesome. You should go do that. I'm serious. You should go do it. That's great. Thanks for saving me and you some time. Not everybody's going to be your customer. What's your next market milestone? To raise the money you need to raise, how many customers do you need, sir? 10. You need 10 enterprise customers. Okay? You don't need 11. It goes to 11. You only need 10, right? So just find 10. Reverse engineer a funnel. How many do I need in the top of my funnel that's in my ICP? What do I expect the conversion rate to be from PQL to MQL to SAO, et cetera? And what do I get out of the bottom of the funnel? My guess is with you, if it's enterprise class stuff, what's the average ticket size? 100K, right? So you're looking at 6-month sales cycles minimum. early stage startup, because you're only dealing with innovators and early adopters, maybe more like 9 months, you're going to need 200 companies in your funnel. And you better have a damn good product, and they better believe in you. Right, that's demonstration of capabilities. Wonderful, give me an opportunity to demonstrate that to you. And at this stage, take any opportunity to do that. Take the challenge, make the investment. Because if you continue to hear the same shit over and over again, that's called a pattern. And if you don't adjust to the pattern, that's called insanity. Right? So you look for the patterns. Anyway, I'm not that passionate about this stuff. Yes? Industry standard conversion rate. So I can give you David Skoke's sales complexity cycle talk if you want, which is just a grid that says the longer the sales cycle, the higher the cost to acquire is, therefore the higher the lifetime value needs to be. But genuinely, it's about money and people. As the complexity rises, the cycle time goes up, the cost to acquire goes up. And there's several different stages. You go from self-service touchless to light touch inside, medium touch inside, high touch inside, channel, field team, and that can go anywhere from minutes to years. And you have to recognize it starts with the ideal customer profile, like this gentleman here. I'm selling to enterprise IT organizations with this many people who have this problem, who do this, who use these products, who behave in this way, who've demonstrated this, who go to these events. Etc. And then you look at that, and based on history, you can give numbers. But as a startup, you have to be conservative in those assumptions. So enterprise class stuff, low single-digit conversion rates from the top of the funnel to the bottom. When you get into down to B2C, depending on the product, you can get low conversion rates too. But it doesn't matter what the conversion rate is, everybody. It matters what it costs you to acquire a customer and what the lifetime value of that customer is. That's what matters most. I was having a conversation, quick anecdotal story on this, with a startup that's in the dating space. Shocking, every dating company comes to us. But they said, we quit using Facebook and Instagram for testing because we were only getting 1% conversion rates. I said, is that good or bad? Well, that's got to be bad, right? So, I don't know. How much did it cost you? They couldn't answer me, right? So you have to think about it in those terms. But that's a really good question. So the short other answer is the smaller the deal size, the fewer decision makers, the faster it goes. Conversion rates are going to depend on market need, timing, differentiation, competition. Don't underestimate the market. Market wins every time. 6 of the top 10 reasons startups fail are market related. More questions? Yes. Where do you find phone numbers? You buy them, or you scrape them. You buy lists. There are list brokers all over the planet. You hire one. GetSteward is one that we love. GetStuard, plug for them. CRM that we love for startups, Propeller CRM. It combines the best of outbound email automation and CRM. Very simple, lightweight product based over in Galvanize here. So there are a lot of different ways. If you know of a trade association or in the industry of the ICP, they always sell their lists. There are a ton of different data and list brokers. There's tons of tools for scraping. Talk to a good growth hacker and figure that out. Good question. Well, okay, so they heard, no, this is a good question. I'm glad you brought that up. Gentleman over here said we heard a counter argument in another talk, not to buy lists. So first thing is I never speak in absolutes. I only drink it. It depends. There's a lot of factors that go into it, right? I've got 20 years of list building under my belt, so I know how to do it. I know how to build it. I know who the good vendors are. And when you find good ones, you want to capture them and study them and keep them forever. I've literally bought data acquisition companies before just because the team is so damn good. It's like a good development team. because it's manual. You still have to have people somewhere doing something. What you do is just like anything else. You ask for a sample list, anywhere, depending on your market, 10, give me 10 samples, give me 100, whatever it is, and then you physically call those people, and you find out if they're real, and it's a thing. And then you expect that company that you buy the list from to replace every bad record that they give you. And that has to be part of your agreement. You have to watch out for the foreign entities that try to pretend to be American people, right? And they talk like, my name's Alice. No, Alice, my name, in their emails. So you have to watch out for those folks. Good data is hard to find, and it's hard to find a good relationship with that data. Every day a new company pops up that's got something going on. Yeah? Yeah. What are my thoughts on hiring people like Upwork contractors? So I love them. Stefan Casriel's a good friend of mine, so I'm going to always promote Upwork. Yes, you should hire contractors if you know how to manage them. It's just like outsourcing software development. If you're clear on what you want, if you show them clearly what you want, you monitor it and you manage it effectively, and you test it in small batches, you can be very successful with that. Yes, sir. Awesome. Great question. This is my favorite, right? Because the Renaissance rep is my favorite topic. The gentleman said, I'm the first salesperson in a B2B startup. What kind of profile should I have? So the attributes of a Renaissance rep are you embrace ambiguity, you can cross-communicate well across different teams, you represent the market's needs with your product team. Every good product developer needs a good market developer, and if you don't treat people that way, you will fail, and eventually you'll come to my line of thinking here, which is you have to respect the market and the people that work with you on the market side. They recognize that they don't know what they don't know yet. They're geeks for technology, but they're not necessarily technologists. Like me, I can't even spell HTML. But I know how technology helps companies be successful, and I know how to communicate that back to humans and engineers. So those are the good traits of, did we get that joke? Jeez. But Mark Leslie, who was one of my mentors, who's the founder of Veritas, was a sales guy. Veritas became the 4th largest enterprise software company in the world before he sold it, and he became a Sand Hill Road investor. He wrote an HBR article on the role of the Renaissance rep and what's called the sales learning curve. I strongly suggest you read it, and I strongly suggest you get your product bosses and partners to read it too. Because you should not be having quotas and forecasts and all this other shit when you have no past. You can't predict the future if you don't have a past, and you should not be basing your future on somebody else's past. The biggest mistake people make is they hire people from big companies who've sold similar products to similar customers, who've never built a sales organization, have never been the first sales hire, have never done 0 to 1. They've only done 1 to N. Or congratulations, they were present while Oracle was already successful. It's a dangerous thing to do. What's the #1 cost in all of your organizations? Labor. Don't go hire the director, the top sales guy in some company that's sold in your market who's never been a startup guy, who's never done stage relevant work, and expect him to be successful. Run from the person who demands a high base salary package in a startup. There's only certain people that are cut out for what we do. Entrepreneur is just a French word for fucking crazy. You have to be crazy to do what we do. You have to want that. It has to motivate you. How do you perform under stress? How do you deal with ambiguity? Because most of these sales guys that go, and girls that come from mature companies have had predictable customers, predictable revenue, all the sales tools they need, marketing support, a book of business. They know what to sell at. They have a list of customers that was handed to them. They've got their own cube. They've got salary plus benefits and vacation. All these things, right? Then they come into your world and they are just beaten to death because they're not used to it. We call those people coin-operated salespeople. You put a coin in and they do their thing. And they're valuable and they're important. But later, right? Not now. The Renaissance rep is the all things to all people person. You represent the product in the market. And you have to work together with the product side of your team to develop an iterative product market feedback loop. You should be meeting, if not daily, weekly, based on the amount of feedback you receive from your customers and your prospects about the product itself, how people are perceiving it. Because you're all selling incomplete shit. We don't do this in hardware. If this clicker doesn't work when it comes off the assembly line, I can tell, right? I just turn it on and plug it in, it doesn't work. Well, then I'm not going to mass produce 1 million of these, am I? And hire a giant sales force to go out and sell them. But software people do it all day long with an incomplete product. And then they expect it to just fly off the shelves. Why? Because they love their product. And that's fine. You can love it all you want. It's not going to pay the bills. Great question. All right, got to wrap it up. Any other questions? One last one. Great question. When do you get your first salesperson in the startup? Okay. Oh, when? Okay, go ahead. Yeah. What's the length of that learning curve with that first salesperson? Nobody knows. If they think they know, they're lying to you, right? The first attitude you have to have is, we don't know what we don't know yet. What we do know how to do is get to the truth as quickly as possible. Now, how do you quantify when it's time to hire a second salesperson? As soon as the first person has paid for themselves for 2 consecutive quarters. Well, it depends on how you work together. How do you know when to fire that person? That's another good question. Well, you got to have measurables. That's why you have instrumentation. That's why you talk every day. That's why you have this. Don't just send the person off and just expect them to close shit. It's going to end badly. It's a team effort. You have to have, every product developer needs a market developer. We live in the age of applied technology. That means that it's easier to get a product to market than it is to get traction in the marketplace. You may not like that, but it's the truth. Because 90% of the shit in this room is not patentable or defensible. So it's it's the insights to the business that the problems you're trying to solve, and execution that matters, right? So you better get with that and recognize the importance of the market side of the business. You can't just be Steve Jobs, be an asshole, and be successful anymore. Not unless you've got something that nobody else has, and people are going to buy it in spite of you. You have to recognize the importance of the market. Thanks.